As a former M1 Max Studio power user, I recently made the jump to the 14-inch MacBook Pro with the M4 Max chip. But leading up to that purchase, I had questions. Would the editing experience be the same or better?
So I think I've slowed down the laptop.
Would I regret going back to Dongles? 6 months later, I've mostly found my groove, but there's still some friction. Now, this isn't going to be your typical tech review. This is my perspective as a full-time YouTuber and filmmaker who edits, writes, and does everything I need to do on this device. I'll walk you through the pros and the cons and how I've improved my overall laptop experience. If you're a filmmaker who's in the same boat as I was, stick around. This video will give you some clarity. And lastly, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share this video if you found it useful. So I just wanted to just briefly talk about my thought process moving forward with this, because this is a beast of a machine, but I have some reservations of it being in a laptop. This was sort of like future-proofing in a sense, where I'm going to have this laptop for the next 4 or 5 years because it's that powerful. And it's the same way I felt when I bought the M1 Max Studio. At the time, it was a pretty penny. I paid $3,800 3 years ago for that computer, and I never reached this full capacity. You know, I edit a lot, and having a desktop experience was great. In tandem, I did that with the iPad. You guys know I've been on that iPad journey as well. I still have that too. I'm going to be using it in conjunction with this. And so there's so many positives with the M1 Studio. And the only reason why I'm moving on from it, I am doing a lot more traveling, and YouTube has become one of my main sources of income. So the traveling for productions, I don't want my responsibilities for my sponsorship deals that I have to go and fall off by the wayside and be backlogged. So having a laptop is a necessity right now for my current state in my work. Let me just tell you what the specs are for this then. This is 64 gigs of RAM, 2 terabytes of SSD. This is the largest SSD that I've had in a laptop. This is the 16-core, 40-core chip. But this is the most spec'd out computer I've ever owned. And it boggles my mind that it's in a 14-inch computer. A couple firsts for me. One, this is the first time I actually purchased a laptop in full cash. And if you haven't been following our debt recovery journey, I'll link the playlist here. Before any and all tech, we've been putting it on credit cards. And sometimes I will pay things in full, but majority of times I will be financing it. This is the first time ever that I've purchased a new computer without financing it, and it feels absolutely amazing. Now, my thought process of getting something this spec'd out versus this something that would just get me by, I felt like buying something that would just get me by would have been a waste of my money, because I would still have a much more powerful studio at home, and I would just be getting by when I'm traveling. I was doing that when I had the MacBook Air, and I was doing that when I had my wife's laptop. Now, I would get things done with my wife's laptop, but it would take a little bit longer. Looking at what I wanted to purchase, I wanted something to go beyond what I was already used to. For me, when I was trying to choose a laptop, I had to think about what kind of Mac user I am already. And like I said, I do a lot of editing, so I'm a power user. So I have multiple screens and displays open. I have multiple applications open: Lightroom, Photoshop, DaVinci Resolve, Safari, notes, reminders. I have literally everything open at my disposal. So I'm gonna be using a lot of RAM. I'm gonna be using a lot of my onboard SSD storage as well, in combination with external stuff. So like, it needed to be a powerhouse for that most part. And as I was looking at the different configurations, for me, the MacBook Pro models felt a little risky for my use case. If I were to upgrade the RAM or processor, I'm in the M4 Max space now. And as for the M2 and M3 models, I would save a lot of money, but quickly realized that the resale value would be next to nothing. All right, real quick, I want to share with you all today's sponsor, which is Audiio, and they just updated one of my favorite features on the platform, Link Match 2.0. Let me show you how it's gotten more powerful. So Link Match allows you to paste any song from YouTube or Spotify into the search. And once you paste your link, Link Match pulls up matches of a similar feeling and sound in their music library. But here's the best part. Link Match 2.0 highlights which part of the new soundtrack sounds the closest to the song that you copied into it. No more guessing about the intros or the chorus. Now, if you want to get even more specific, you can now search by the hook or the drop of the song. Like I already said, LinkMaster is one of my favorite tools, but this has gotten even better, and it speeds up my search time when looking for music. If that's something that interests you, you can click on the link in the description below. You can also use my code Cine70 to get 70% off your first year when you make a new account. So check it out. Okay, so what really matters about this video, what's it actually been like using the MacBook Pro and replacing my Mac Studio? So again, in terms of how I use my computer, it hasn't really changed. I'm still very much a power user. As a standalone laptop, as I'm traveling on an airplane or this, that, and the other, it does great. I can do what I need to do. Though I do wish there was a 15-inch MacBook version. I just think 15 inches is a sweet spot, because 14 just gets really cramped really fast. Now, in terms of the editing program that I use DaVinci Resolve. That works very well too. And that was one of the reasons why I picked up the M4 chip, because I wanted the new technology that was being introduced. And the same thing with the software, how that would marry a little bit better and the workflow and such. All right, so let's talk about the first 3 months of using the computer. I think this is where a lot of the software and hardware was kind of like working against each other in some cases. But firstly, I just want to say, I personally don't enjoy the laptop desktop hybrid situation here. It's really messy. Granted, I have a messy desk, but I think just overall, it's just cables everywhere. I'm using external boxes to get other I/O ports because you're only limited to 3, this, that, and the other. First world problems, I know. But I just wanted to throw that out there. But something I did notice during my workflow of editing, again, I use DaVinci Resolve as my main editor, have been for 5 years. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to upgrade too, because all the newer AI features and how the software is going to communicate with the hardware of the new laptops and everything like that, I kind of was sold on the marketing. Yes. But not to say it was all roses. Some things were just kind of head scratchers. So for instance, in terms of my workflow, I often tend to upload things at high resolutions to YouTube because I want to utilize, the detail that you can see playing back and things like that. And so I was trying to export a 6K 3:2 ratio, aspect ratio, that is, video that's about 13 minutes long. Super simple. You guys have already watched it on this channel, but during the export, it took extremely long.
So I think I've slowed down the laptop. This is just a normal export. When I say normal, this is in 6K. Exporting it right now. And it's going really slow. I mean, really, all it is just a grade in 6K exporting. So that's quite interesting. Haven't had this before. It says an hour. That is baloney. CPU is at 30% memory, 40 gigs being used out of the 64 that I have, and it's just slow. That's crazy.
So I'm not sure what went wrong with that, but the solution I found is that I cut the resolution in half. So instead of 6K, I exported it at a 3K and it was fine. Granted, here's some other things, I guess, context-wise. I only film in ProRes on all of my Fujifilm cameras. Yes, I know, storage is not so much a nightmare, but I find a workflow for my storage. And so that's a mix of either ProRes HQ, ProRes 422, or ProRes LT. In this case, it was ProRes LT with only 2 nodes and no noise reduction. So again, it was very much a head scratcher. But once I dropped the resolution, it exported within under 10 minutes, which was, I was glad to see. The other instance, and I believe this was more of like DaVinci Resolve, is that I was playing back the 6K footage from my X-H2S is 6.2K and ProRes 422 LT. And for whatever reason, at full, there was a lot of stuttering. I wasn't dropping any frames, but there was a lot of stuttering, and then the audio was miscue. Again, this was when I first got the laptop too, so.
Plus the benefit of a bigger sensor, so we'll have to see when it finally comes out. There is internal ND 2 to 7 stops, and you can
So for whatever reason, it's like a lag. I think this is probably just DaVinci Resolve bugging out.
I'm on
tighten
the
with
Resolve,
the
DaVinci
sensor
Resolve
into
20.
camera. They don't have to explain it to me. As long as they give it to me, I am happy about it.
Sounds
So
off.
that's all I care about.
And I would say another Achilles heel early on was the noise reduction. Using a noise reduction tool in DaVinci Resolve really killed this laptop. There was a lot of drop frames, obviously, and this was after it was being rendered. So I had to drop it down all the way down to a quarter for it to have any significant playbacks to actually get through what I was trying to get through. And that was including, I downloaded this graphic texture thing that has some movement to it and has some grain to it. That really slowed down the timeline as well. It even when it was rendered, it would be choppy and kind of just skip over that part. I wouldn't be able to see it a smooth playthrough even at quarter resolution on the timeline. So that was really a head scratcher. And the reason why I point this out is because currently the projects that I'm editing, aside from YouTube and stuff, I do need to use noise reduction. Some of the clips I need to clean up, and that's just the workflow. So throughout the 10 to 12 minute film that I'm editing, there's quite a few clips that need noise reduction. And when I was just doing a rough draft and just throwing some things in there, finessing it, after it rendered, it had a hard time playing back smoothly on the timeline, which is a head scratcher. So, that sounds like horrible and whatnot. And again, I'm not trying to bash it. This is obviously just my experience. But fast forward to now, 3 months after that, so the full 6 months, I think this is where DaVinci Resolve did clean up a lot of stuff. And again, it might be a DaVinci Resolve thing. But of course, like I said, there is some throttling here. Fans keep going really loud when you're trying to export high resolution footage. So there's definitely, it's a laptop. There's some things limited by a laptop. But I think the last couple updates that DaVinci Resolve has introduced had cleaned up some of those hiccups. I went back and opened up the project, and it seems to kind of smooth out a little bit, even at half, even at full. So again, I guess I have to report back a little bit later if I do another follow-up for a whole year. But this has been the later half of what's been going on with the updates, especially on the hardware side and the software side. I think it's starting to catch up and start to work together a lot better. And I'm not that tech savvy. If the numbers look good to me, I'm going to get it. Hence why I bought this specific model, because I wanted to elevate what I thought was to elevate my workflow and not have the same issues and not have issues at all. But granted, the form factor is kind of limiting factor here. So, this is where I do miss having a Mac Studio. I didn't run into any type of bottlenecking or throttling, obviously, because it's the form factor of that type of computer. But at the same time, I don't regret getting this purchase because I needed it for the job at hand. And that's something that you had to really consider when thinking through, if you're in the same camp as me. Do you move on from the M1 chips and upgrade to the 3, to the 4, now the introduction of the 5? So you had to really think about that. Another thing that did appeal me to the laptop, the M4 Max laptops, was the introduction of the Thunderbolt 5 ports. Now, there isn't a lot of accessories out in the market right now that can fully take advantage of the new ports with those higher speeds, but there are a few things out there. So the first thing I purchased was the Cal Digit Element 5, and that's a Thunderbolt 5 hub. It does its job, I think. I am looking at the updated TS5 Element, because it has a little bit more ports that I need, and I would rather have the audio jack on that device versus it being on my laptop. I still have to plug in my audio to the laptop. I forgot audio anyway for this whole setup. But anyway, that's one device that's taking advantage of those ports, so I can connect, my monitor, which I'll talk to soon, and a few other things like my SSDs and stuff like that. I haven't updated my SSDs yet to Thunderbolt 5. I'm still on the previous generation, which works just fine. So I never had any issues with those. I have Samsung T7s and my OWC Envoy Pro, which is rated really fast anyway. Another device that I have that takes advantage of the faster speeds from this computer is the newer Angelbird card reader. It's the performance card reader Type B, and this thing is incredibly fast, insanely fast at that, compared to what I had before, which was the PKT Type B card reader. And I thought that was fast already, but this is like incredibly fast. And then lastly, one of my favorite things about this desk setup is the monitor. This is the ASUS ProArt 32-inch. I'll put the rest of the long name up here. But this is something I really wanted to get ever since it was announced, and I saw some couple of reviews about this monitor. I've always wanted to own a 32-inch monitor, and that really does help and aid this small screen dilemma of a laptop. So this alone makes the desktop experience way more efficient because you have so much more screen real estate. Some of the things that I do for editing, I stack my timelines in DaVinci Resolve. If you don't know how to do that, here's how you do it. All right, you want to open up your timeline, and once you do, go all the way to the right side of the frame, click on this plus, and it will add a second timeline to the bottom. And then you open up another timeline. Here you can move clips between both timelines seamlessly. Like everything in this video, not all things are perfect. This monitor has its quirks, and I think it has improved over time with a few updates. But a couple of things I want to point out. One, for whatever reason, there's a screen shutoff initiation, and it doesn't give you a time limit of how long the screen will turn off.
So right now, the monitor is blacked. So I missed the warning sign for it, but the screen has gone black now. And it just blinks, and it's going to do this for a couple minutes. This is one of the quirks that's kind of annoying. Yeah, can't do anything. Everything else is on. You know, all this is on, but yeah.
The first couple of times that it did this, I thought my monitor was defective, and I was like freaking out. I spent $2,000 on this monitor. I was not happy until I actually saw the warning sign that pops up. It says screen shut off, screen initiation, and I couldn't figure out why it had to do that. That's something that was not brought to my attention before buying this, and so be aware of that. It still does that. It still doesn't have a time limit of how long it goes. I would say it sits between 2 to 3 minutes of just completely off. But, you just kind of like, wait, what's going on? So I don't understand that. The second thing is actually the fans. This is the first time I've had a monitor that you can actively hear the fans. I don't get bothered by a lot of things, but this fan is kind of annoying. And there'll be times where it just be like just burning. It's like it's trying to cool itself down, and I'm in a controlled room, air conditioning. It stays around 70 degrees or so. So it's not hot in here. Even during the summer, it wasn't hot in here. So for whatever reason, the fans just kick up. Now, I will say a few updates have improved. It's more of a consistent fan noise. The fan noise is not going away. That's just the way it's designed. But it doesn't kick up as much as I noticed. But and the last thing I want to point out is I think how this monitor is constructed, it has 2 panels, and sometimes you can see the delay in the panels. This happens at least 2 to 3 times throughout the day, just like how the screen initiation happens about 2 to 3 times. And what that means, and I documented this, is essentially you get a lag on one either side of the monitor, and you'll see the line down the middle, and it will if you try to scroll, it will be just a delay on both sides. So it'll be moving at different speeds. Now, I know this monitor has a built-in screen shifting mode, so you won't occur. So any screen burning will occur, which is brilliant. But I don't know if that's a direct result of that. And so, like I said, from the latest update, I think they've addressed it because I haven't seen that pop up in a month or two now. And I updated this about a couple of weeks ago. So there you have it. Again, I like the monitor. The screen real estate is what wins this. Yes, I can talk about, the color, the bit depth and all that stuff. I haven't fully utilized this monitor to that capacity just yet. There's just some things I want to purchase to make that a much more enjoyable workspace when it comes to color grading. All right, with all that being said, what's the verdict? Should you upgrade? Personally, if I hadn't the need to travel and needing to edit on the road and all these other things with my responsibilities for the sponsorships on this channel, I would have waited one more year just to get another iteration of a chip so I can make a decision between M4 and M5. But I think if it was someone like you, I would say, just to say all of the M series chips are really, really good. And if there isn't a immediate need, or there isn't a particular workflow that's not working for you, if that's not the case, you don't really need to upgrade. Maybe once everything that comes out for the M5s, maybe that's the time you move on from an M1. But if your workflow is fine, don't feel the pressure to do that. Again, I had the pressure of all these external factors, and which made me make the move. Now, do I regret it? Did I overspend getting this laptop? If I was to actually sell this laptop today, I would probably lose about $600 to $700 on it. If I owned the M3, I would probably lose a lot more, probably $1,000 to $2,500, or maybe $1,500 or so. And if I had an M2, the resale value is almost next to nothing. Y'all be losing more money anyway. So in this case, buying this laptop, I'm completely fine. If I needed to sell it, I would still make a big chunk back, just because it is a higher end spec model and all the other things. And so, I do miss my Mac Studio. So down the way, who knows, I probably will get a Mac Studio and I'll be completely done with getting computers for a good while. Even though I believe I'm going to have this laptop for a long time, this whole changing out stuff, I believe this is going to be set for a long time. I just don't like the desktop experience, and that's very much a first world problem. But again, that's going to be much later. So I hope this video was helpful in some sort of way. Make sure to check out the links below in the description. Check out some other videos if you are new to this channel, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Oh, I did all of that without my light. Yeah, that made a huge difference. Oh well.